again, everyone, and thank you for joining PropTalk, a property management podcast powered by ResMan. I'm Elizabeth Francisco, the president here at ResMan, and I'm your host for today's episode, How Property Management Companies Can Recruit and Retain, which is the part 2 of this episode, during the Great Resignation. If you didn't check out the first half of this, I really encourage you to do so. There was some great content about what you can do to recruit talent while the talent pool is greater than ever as a result of the Great Resignation. So welcome again, Amanda and Gregory. We're glad to have you and staying on with us while we continue this conversation. We're going to dive right into it. The best way to overcome the Great Resignation is to get out in front of it to begin with and retain your employees so you don't have as many open positions to fill. And we all know that turnover is incredibly expensive, and it's always been expensive. For example, Gallup estimates that losing talent costs American businesses at least $1 trillion annually. But in today's labor climate, attrition hurts businesses more than ever, and I think we can all agree on that. Taking care of your existing employees and investing in their well-being definitely cannot be overstated. I mean, put yourself in an employee's shoes today. They see the news articles, the social posts about the number of people that are quitting their jobs en masse. They may even see friends or coworkers that have resigned themselves. You can see why they might be tempted to maybe jump on that bandwagon and consider making a change. This is why the why behind what you do and why it matters is more important than ever if you want to retain talent, as well as how are you investing in your employees beyond just monetarily, beyond a salary. You know, really, we all care about our financial goals, but what else is in it for me as an employee? Today, employees want to feel a greater sense of significance from the place they choose to invest their time and effort. And I think even the phrasing of that is important because we talk about investing in employees, but if we're real and we are willing to look on the other side and look in the mirror, they're choosing to invest their time in us as well. Leaders need to build purpose. It's more important than ever. Employees want to take pride in what they do. And when they do, they will be more engaged and productive. Employees want to feel valued. They want to feel trusted. They want to know that the decision to join your company and to stay with your company is the right career choice. And it's a choice that has an immense weight for them and their families. And I bring up families because of the last 2 years, as so many people have been working from home and have involuntary coworkers participating in Zoom meetings. Some of us also have involuntary pets as coworkers. But sadly, and you get real for a minute, there are still a lot of companies in the marketplace that are looking at their employees as resources, simply a necessary means to an end. And I think that is really just a sign of how detached leadership is from where their employees are today. And then there's other companies that maybe lose sight of employee engagement or even what they're doing inadvertently to lower employee engagement levels, even when that may not be the goal. One of the things I found really heartwarming during the pandemic for the multifamily industry specifically was this renewed focus on our frontline teams as they became front and center as essential workers. And now I think as the industry collectively sighs with this relief about the 2021 performance, which was much better than expected, and looks optimistically towards the future, we not only need to maintain that level of engagement with our teams, we need to take it up a notch and take it to another level. In the apartment industry, great operators realize that the renewal process begins on the day one of move-in. And I imagine that that same principle should apply to employee retention. And so going back to our guest today with Amanda and Gregory, we're going to dive into this discussion about how to get out in front of retaining your employees. And Amanda, I know we've talked quite a bit, and you've been really instrumental in shaping ResMan's, onboarding process for new employees, and it has changed quite a bit over the years. So I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about how important is that onboarding process, and then the next 90 days as well.
It is the critical time period, right? It's the first 48 hours, you're triaging almost. And I think that we need to look at it that way. These are people who need us to survive. They need us to learn the ways that we do things at our organization. We have to be intentional as leaders. We have to be intentional as the HR team to ensure that our new employees are getting everything they need to be set up for success for hopefully what will be a long lasting relationship with your company. So, a couple of
Hmm.
things that you can do are develop an onboarding team that is going to envelop themselves from the get go around that new hire. Whether it's an immediate internal stakeholder, someone that they're going to be working with who has maybe the same title as them, another leasing agent who may be responsible for training them. Um, Anyone who is responsible for the ultimate success of this person needs to be involved from the get go during that onboarding process. The hiring manager has got to be engaged in onboarding their new hires. They
Hmm.
cannot just set an agenda out and say, "Hey, here you go." It has to be an engaged it is time consuming, but it has to be intentional. And, I think as much as it's time consuming to onboard a new hire,
Hmm.
it's tenfold to even find talent to replace that person if and when they leave. I think the other thing too is don't take anything for granted. No matter how long you've been at a company, don't take anything for granted because, again, this person is coming in not having any idea what to expect necessarily, where to find resources, etc. I have learned so much from our 30-day check-ins. So we, as the HR
Oh, yeah.
team, are checking in with our new hires around that 1 month mark to just
Hmm.
make sure that they are getting what they need, make sure that this is what they signed up for, and to make sure that we're still aligning in our expectations for what their responsibility is going to be. And I've learned so much about what our employees are needing in that first 30 days, and it's simple stuff like I don't know who to go to for this,
Hmm.
and I think being attentive to those needs as time moves on. It's gonna be like riding a bike, right? It's gonna be so much easier to onboard new hires because you now know what they expect. And so I think another thing that Gregory and I talk about a lot is just grace on behalf of the company. As a company, being empathetic to what the employee is going through, because it can sometimes be a culture shock too. They may not realize how fast paced it is, or different, they may come from a similar or a different property management company who does things much, much differently. And so being empathetic and having that grace within the
Hmm.
first 30, 60, 90 days as they learn your company and learn your ways is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you think about it from a ResMan standpoint. We're a hyper growth company, so I often compare the pace of our business as the autobahn. So imagine coming in and driving into the autobahn lane, and that's got to be what it's got to feel like. So you're right, that grace is really important. And I also think from a property management perspective, from my years in the industry, when you're the new hire that comes into a leasing office or corporate office, I think sometimes we forget how close those ties are between our current employees and how intimidating that can be to a new team member who doesn't know the inside jokes, who doesn't have those ties yet, and is overall intimidated. It's the first 90 days. They're a little on edge. You add that to it. And then, of course, if they are a minority coming into that environment, then that can even add another layer of some insecurity and uncertainty. So I love that you use the word grace, and I think that's awesome. And I was wondering too, from your perspective, Gregory, I was thinking about in our other part one of this podcast episode, you really made some great points about the relationship that you build during the recruiting process. Thinking about the relationship and the bar that you set and how important that is. So, what are your thoughts about after you've put in all that work? What do you expect to see from the company for the candidate that you've helped bring into the organization?
I need the company to perform in the way that I set the expectations, right?
Mhm.
So, as Amanda touched, we need to have this onboarding process move smoothly. And the candidate needs to feel welcomed and comfortable and be able to communicate too. I think that's very important that people are comfortable to come forward. And this happens to me a lot that, after the onboarding process, we do the 30-day check in, all of that. But, people come back and will be comfortable to reach out and say, hey, like this is going on. Like I want people to be comfortable to do that.
Mhm.
And you need somebody inside the organization that they are comfortable with. They can come to you and be like, I don't know what to do for this. I don't know what to do for this. And you can direct them properly. So I think having a quality contact from the beginning through onboarding, through 6 months, a year down the road, doesn't matter. Just somebody they can actually honestly communicate with, and then you can direct them properly.
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
Another thing that we did prior to the pandemic that carried through and we'll be reigniting again this year is the new hire ambassador program. So we have a program that is sponsored by our employee engagement committee, and our new hire ambassadors are assigned to new hires. And it may be different for people who are working on site or at corporate, but for us, it's pretty easy to say, hey, we have a new person starting on our implementation team. We're
Mm.
going to assign them to one of our new hire ambassadors who works on the product team. So there is an immediate, it's someone they know and is not in their department. And it just starts creating those connections right off the bat. And
Mhm.
to Gregory's point, for us at ResMan, our people team, we want to be there and to really serve as a partner and a resource for our team members to come talk to us. But
Mhm.
it also helps to have peers who do not wear the hat of human resources
Yes.
to be able to say, hey, what can you help me find this? Or to
Mhm.
just serve as an additional resource that they view is really on their same level. And so that has been such a great success for us. And we're
Mhm.
introducing them to the team. We're having our new hires fill out, questionnaires. And again, much like the culture interview that I conduct, the
Mhm.
questionnaire is an opportunity for that new hire to really showcase who they are and not just their title.
Mhm. No, you have a great point. And, hearing this and through us collaborating and talking about the value of this episode and why we needed to do it, and why we shifted some things around because this is an important topic and it's relevant right now. I have to appreciate understanding what I've learned about even more in depth about what you two do and how much work it is, but the relationship and the way that you carry the candidates through the process and then the dedication to the first 30 days is really important. And I think about the you know just great appreciation for the way that you carry a candidate through the applicant process and then into joining our teams and the care and the relationship, and then the first 30 days, that dedication. It's occurred to me now that's like, how jolting could that be to an employee that joins a team that maybe it's a team that's really short staffed, or maybe it's a leader who's really overwhelmed because they have been short staffed. But how jolting could that be to the new hire to go from that experience and not necessarily get that same level, which they should. But if they don't, that could be really detrimental and set that employee basically on a downward spiral.
And the key is the feedback loop. So
Mhm.
even though, you know, new hires are coming to Gregory and me or to the people team, the HR team, whomever, the feedback loop has to be completed where
Mhm.
the person in my shoes, the person in Gregory's shoes, we have to go then back to the hiring manager and say, hey, this is what we're receiving. We received this information and let's put some color around it. Let's start talking about their perspective and put ourselves in their shoes. And that's really where the HR function becomes so critical, is to be able to navigate the waters, to take information and put it in a way that makes sense to the manager from either a business perspective or even just the people perspective, right? This person is feeling this way, and we need to work with them
Mhm.
so that they no longer feel this way, and we can bring them on board fully because they're always kind of teeter-tottering, right? Those first 30 days, they're like, should I walk all the way into the door or should I like, breeze is kind of nice out here. So ensuring that you get them all the way into the door. Again, it takes
Mhm.
the entire village, the entire company. And that's why the new hire ambassador program is so successful, is because it is the village, right?
Mhm.
It is additional people that can wrap their arms around that new hire and really bring them in and pull them along. And by day 60, by day 90, you're no longer pulling them along. They're right there next to you. And that's what creates a successful hire.
And it makes me think too, years ago in the industry, as I was part of a portfolio that was acquired, and we went from a small family owned business into Summit Properties at the time, which was a REIT. It was a very different dynamic. And one of the things that they did was assign us mentors. And I know it was instrumental in helping us, you know, understand and become part of the company's, bigger overarching culture. Um, but when there is a team that is really, struggling or is really short staffed, having that person was just such a blessing to me. And I think about like where would my career have been, because Summit was such an impactful company for me because of what I learned and how it shaped me as a leader. So shout out to all my former Summiteers. Whoop, whoop. But because that's a thing, actually.
You just touched on something that's important. You remember that experience, and candidates and new hires, we have memories, right? We remember things. We remember how we felt during that period of time, and that
Yes.
sticks with you. And as Gregory is talking to candidates, that's been brought up, right? That's part of the interview process, and that has lasting effect, the good and the bad.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, that was a long time ago, and I definitely still remember it quite clearly. So, when we were talking earlier, we started the conversation and touched on a little bit about, in the Great Resignation or the Great Rehires, it's not always about the monetary aspects. And I think that's our first gut reaction. But it really isn't. And I think we have to talk about that. So if we think about in terms of career growth, remember we said this is a big investment. I'm making a decision to invest my time in years potentially of my life with your company. And I have to question what's in it for me. Most of our candidates and our employees, it always is going to come back to, well, what's the career growth option? And I think, even in our roles as managers and leaders, when you have a good, solid career growth plan, the investments we're making into someone's career, can they leave? If they should ever decide to leave, are they going to leave with more skills than they came in the door with? And that's an important topic you have to talk about, because that has a value. In fact, when you leave your junior college or a college and you leave with more skill sets, well, you paid a lot of money for that. So I think it's important to remember that's an investment that has value. In the spirit of keeping, and trying to retain our talented, frontline associates, and even in our own associates and suppliers and just the industry in general, what does a career path look like? Like, how do you communicate that? And I think, Amanda, I know that you are instrumental in working through this, thinking about it. You sit side by side with leaders in the organizations and all of our management levels to understand this. So, what advice do you have to property management companies and like I said, anyone in our audience really that could help them think about this if they don't have a well-defined plan today?
So I want to start with my own personal journey. And much like property management, there are many people in human resources that do not seek out human resources and they fall into it. And my story is similar. I came to ResMan and I was not in human resources, and Gregory has a similar trajectory. And I fell into it. I fell into human resources. I fell into the love of human resources. And I think that is part of career growth, is trying new things and finding the things that you can excel at and having those nurtured by the people who you work with, whether it's coworkers, whether it's a mentor or a manager. Identifying those skill sets is so powerful. And a testament to the environment that I was able to grow my career in here at ResMan. And it's just that it's that natural investment and the natural care that managers can have for the people that work for them is really, really critical. And so, again, it's that mentality of the people that work for you are not just there to do a job. And most of them are also not just there to earn a paycheck. They really want to feel valued. They really want to know that what they do matters. And so I think supporting your employees starts there, and it's identifying the skills that they're really good at and then investing in those. And a leasing agent may come in and then move to the back office because they have a strong skill set in accounting, and then they grow from there. But it was that identifier that a manager really took the time to find what they were good at and then started investing in it. And so I think when we're talking to new hires, you may not know, and I tell our new hires this all the time, especially because at ResMan we are in such a hyper-growth mode. There may be a position that we don't even know exists today, but 9-18 months down the road, it's there, and that may be yours. But, we have to at least navigate through this position that we've hired you for and that you have the skill set for, and then we go from there. And so I think that's why it should never be predefined what a career path looks like. It certainly can be. You can be an accountant and be an accountant and move up and do that. But I don't think that there really ever is a position where it is so vertical that you can only go up. You can go up and you can go to the side and then go up again. And that is the greatness
Mhm.
about being in today's world is the opportunities are endless in any industry. And I think as well with property management, because it has seen such a strong evolution over the past, 5, 15 years, with technology and
Mhm.
with how we invest, how are property management companies investing and growing their business.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I was just sitting here thinking about it as you were saying it, and I'm like, wait a minute. Should I quit questioning my hiring practices? Because I was thinking about you and Tammy, and I'm like, both of you came in for marketing, and neither one of you stayed there very long.
But you were quick to identify what our
Hmm.
strengths were. And, again, sometimes that's not an innate talent that a manager has. Sometimes a manager is a manager because that was the next step in their career. And that's
Yep.
okay. Having those conversations with your team members, having one-on-ones,
Hmm.
ensuring that you are engaged in their growth,
Yep.
that's what's going to help support them throughout their career.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point. And especially in multifamily, as we know all too well, you can come in as a leasing agent. There's a certain set of skills. There's certain, you know, um, natural fit that people that are successful in that role tend to have. And then the next career progression for most of them is to go into the assistant manager's position, which is very quantitative and is, more engaging with, the laptop and not as much with the customers as say the leasing. So the natural skill sets that made them eligible for promotion are not necessarily the ones that align with the next stage and the next level of the career. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think you have to have those conversations, but you have to be engaged with your teams to be able to recognize and also give them projects, throw things at them, and sometimes you have to voluntold and see where they really shine. They will surprise you. Gregory, I just want to give you a chance. I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to add to that.
Even a lateral move for somebody when it's identified that they want to go somewhere else, right? They see an opportunity in the organization, something they're interested in, and being open and comfortable with that from an organizational leadership perspective, I think that's healthy, right? Somebody may join, they're a great fit for their role, but there's something else they're interested in. I think it's important to be open to that,
Yeah.
right? And they may better fit that role. They're interested for a reason, right? And being open and comfortable with that. I mean, I know here at ResMan, we've had people that joined and within 90 days, they're like, oh, I saw this, new opening and I want to go look at that and maybe pursue that. And we're open to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
Yep.
I
That
think
was
it's
a
healthy.
great point. So, it's as we think back to the last 2 years, which everybody is, tired of beating, the pandemic conversation. It's been had many, many times. But I think when we're talking about our employee engagement and empowerment, you do have to today, like literally this year in 2022, we have to stop. We do have to acknowledge some things that did come out of the pandemic because I think our employees are facing very unique set of mental and emotional, physical, and financial challenges that are really redefining their expectations or the expectations they have for their employers. I was looking at an article and it was saying that there's when it's looking at how companies responded to the pandemic, and the 2020 survey from HR leaders showed that 94% of businesses have invested in their employee well-being programs. 85% have elevated their mental health support initiatives. 50% have increased support for physical wellness, and 38% have increased support for financial well-being. And so, Amanda and Gregory, I know both of you have been instrumental in working with our employee engagement committee. And we've tackled some of these topics throughout the pandemic as well. And now with our new EEC coming into play, the new members starting, this month. Woo-hoo. Welcome to the team. Welcome to the EEC committee. But I was wondering if you can share with the audience some of the things we've done because I have heard really positive feedbacks and they're they're very inexpensive things too, which is important to point out.
Very inexpensive. The most important thing that you can do is to survey your team members. Survey, survey, survey. And that's one thing that we did a lot of in 2020 because it was so new for us.
Mhm.
Everything that we were experiencing and everything as a company that we were experiencing was so new. And so we were constantly engaging in formal and informal surveys what do our employees need and how can we help support them? And so a few things that we were able to roll out due to our feedback from our employees was ResMan Evolve, which was a wellness program that we launched in 2020. And there are several components of it. The first one was an actual literal wellness program that was very inexpensive to
Hmm.
launch. And it facilitated monthly challenges. And a member of our EEC, our Employee Engagement Committee, took that on at our weekly stand-ups and was providing tidbits and providing updates and showing the leaderboard of who was excelling at these monthly challenges. And we actually started calling her a sensei, right? She was our wellness sensei. And so that really changed the tone of how we started to view and bring in the concept of wellness into ResMan. Other things that we did was, we are still remote. People were getting so tired of the Zoom and the Teams meetings. And so we instituted No Meetings Friday, right? And the
Hmm.
idea is do the work that you've been talking about all week, right? Because instead of those informal drop-ins, all of your communication and
Yep.
and face-to-face conversations became formalized
Hmm.
in the form of 30-minute meetings. And so that was another huge thing. We launched Flex PTO, and I know that can be potentially difficult for the property management world to institute an unlimited or a flexible PTO policy. But reviewing that policy, there are ways that you can bring your paid time off policies into the current century, and without having to walk that unlimited flex line. We also instituted recharge days, and just there's a plethora of different things that we did to really align with who we are as a company and our values. And I think that really helped our team members feel respected and cared for from that
Yeah.
wellness perspective, because it was so isolating, and 2020 and 2021 were so isolating. And these are things that we felt that we could enact change, and we could serve as an agent for taking care of ourselves. The final thing that seemingly always gets lumped into wellness was our focus on DEI, and it was just a part of what was happening in 2020 with a lot of the social unrest that occurred in 2020. And so we launched our diversity, equity, and inclusion program in 2020 as well. And
Hmm.
again, that plays a part into mental well-being and mental
Hmm.
health and wellness. And so those were a lot of things that really led to our success in retaining our employees throughout, and even still today into 2022 as we move forward into this new world that we're living in, has really helped us retain our employees.
Yeah. And, I was thinking too, in property management, the employees are not necessarily remote. They've are essentially and have are essential workers and have been back out for some time now. But the properties can be isolated from one another. And so, from what Amanda was sharing, if I was thinking about if I had my management company, today that I was still running, I think I would look at embracing the aspects of the EEC program. And we talk about like what else can you do to invest in your teams that's not monetary, to give them value, to make them feel heard. You know, y- who is out there on each property that you can bring in to maybe regional EEC groups that you can start that they can help you with the work? Because, one of the things we found in the very beginning is when we started the EEC committee, which was done a couple of years ago, that's because we wanted to help our employees be engaged. As Amanda and I ended up doing a lot of work, and it was getting a little overwhelming. But kind of how the group has changed is this is an opportunity for them to take on projects. It's an opportunity for them to engage with different people in the organization and to be, visible to even the leadership in a different way. And it is extra work, but they've been very happy to volunteer to do it, and that doesn't cost you anything. So maybe that would be something I'd like to throw out as a challenge to our audience is maybe think about that. What can you do to connect your properties and connect your teams to the corporate office in a different way to make it this truly the company, everybody rowing together in the same direction. So, and I think you brought up some other points too about the challenges and, you know, where we are today, this new world. I think it's a valid point. Today's workforce is very different from who they were in 2019. As leaders, we do need to remember that their world was turned upside down during the pandemic. And as a result, I think society overall is reevaluating every aspect of their lives, including what does work mean to them. On the surface, the Great Resignation may seem monetarily motivated, and we've talked about that, but in reality, it's much more profound than that for our employees. And as I mentioned, people have changed because of COVID. When we talk about property management, the PMCs, you guys went through, which that was our own internal acronym, but property management companies went through a lot of change in 2020 to navigate doing business during the pandemic, and we did too. But now's the time to change again. We're not going back to 2019, and it's time to accept that. More than ever before, your employees want to do something with purpose. They want to know why what they do matters, and they want to be part of the conversation, and they're going to demand that they're part of the conversation. To accomplish your business goals, well, they're going to if you want to keep talent. And I think if you're going to accomplish your business goals, which you can't do by yourself, by the way, you need to understand your employees and take into account their personal and professional needs and goals. And you need to think about how to incorporate that or to embrace that or support it or feed that with your own business strategy, your strategic plan. So, one of the things that from being on both sides of the fence, some exercises that we've gone through internally that I never saw on the property management side. And I wanted to make sure we had a really good conversation about that today. So Amanda, can you talk about how we work through the company's overall strategic plan with our employees?
I think it starts prior to what we call the VSGM, which is the vision, strategy, goals, and measure. And before that, you have to think about what your employees are dealing with. We talked about this last year in our podcast about investing in your talent. And it's really just, it's a triangle, right? It's Maslow's hierarchy, but it's for your business. And so think about a triangle and think about 4 smaller triangles within that large triangle. On that bottom floor, you've got your basic needs. What's my career path? What's my why? What's the why of the company? I need to understand that. I need to know that there's security in my position. I need to know that the company is stable, it's well-funded, that I'm not going to come and the doors are going to be locked one day, right? That's security, but also the transparency of how is the company doing, what are we doing, and why does it matter? And then finally is that recognition piece, that belonging. Do I belong here? Am I getting recognized and rewarded for the work? All of that leads to the self-actualization, which is that top part of Maslow's hierarchy, the top part of that triangle. If you can achieve those 3 things, you're going to get a fulfilled team member. They're going to be engaged. They're going to know what they need to do to be successful, and they're going to love doing it. And so that is part of the reason why we started sharing our vision, our strategy, our goals, and our measures, because that is a critical part. What does my day-to-day mean to the larger company? Am I just a number, or does what I do actually matter to the overall company objectives? And so every single year, we now talk about our vision and our strategy. And ultimately, guys, those 2 things are not going to change a lot over time. Your vision is your vision, and that should be addressed every, maybe 3 to 5 years is really, you should be looking at your vision and reevaluating it and tweaking it. The strategy, it should really be those high level things that you guys are going to be doing as a company over the course of, again, maybe 2-3 years to get to that vision. The goals and the measures, those are the today things. What are we doing in this year that are going to help us achieve the overall vision that we have for the company? And so every single year we get together and we talk about those things. We talk about numbers and we talk about the specifics that we need to do as an organization. And that has been so helpful for every single person. From there, it is your responsibility as, the management, right? You've got the executives are saying, here's our ultimate plan. Then what you need to do is break it down. What are the individual departments or what are your individual properties responsible for that are going to help you achieve that vision? And just keep on breaking it down so that every single person can see that lineage all the way up from their day-to-day tasks, all the way up to the annual and the longer term goals. And that for us has been so powerful in performance management, helping everyone with a why of what we do, because there are so many times and conversations that Gregory and I have, which is like, I don't know why they did that. And we can help reinforce and explain that. And what I will tell people is find the things that are most important to you as a company or as a manager. Every single person on your team should know what those things are. whether it's a revenue number or whether it is number
Mhm.
of leases that your overall team should have. There are numbers that they
Or
should be
reputation management.
reputation management. There are things that your team should be able to rattle off the bat. For us, it's our values, right? We
Mhm.
have 3 values. And I think if you went to everyone in the company or a single person in the company, if they've been here for longer than 2-3 months, they know what our 3 values are. And that stuff, that right there is so, so powerful to retention.
Yes, I completely agree. And, I think I threw that out there about the reputation management for the properties. But that is part of that brand, that employer brand. So if the company's goal is to grow and you want to attract the right investors, having the frontline individual team members understand how what they do, how they interact with your customers, how that impacts the greater company goal and how important they are, that's an important part. Everybody wants to be, wake up every day and be proud of what they do and feel like what they do matters. So, I think the other thing too is with the the way that we work with the goals and the metrics. When you lay that out and it's very clear and transparent for the company's goals, and then as Amanda said, you're bringing it down every layer and you go down to the actual individual employee, they understand and you outline as part of this process what are their specific measures and metrics to know that they're being successful. I also think that's a really powerful way to level that playing field to help support your diversity, inclusion, and equity conversations and strategic initiatives because you're making it very clear what they need to do to be successful. And as an employee, I would want to know that. I want to know that what I'm spending my time on is the right thing. And it's interesting. Years ago, there was an employee that we had in our property management company that we were preparing for the reviews, and it was really interesting to understand when we looked at his self review versus ours that we were obviously not on the same page. And he was really surprised by his scoring because he was really bought into what he thought he should be doing. And he was doing what he thought he should be doing pretty consistently. That's all I'm going to say about that. But the flip side was we're the company, we're the ones that are paying the payroll. We need you to understand what our goals are. And that was a really incredible exercise for us. And it really helped shape us, our thoughts going forward. And I was happy to say we were able to get ourselves back on the same page together and very successful. The other thing I wanted to make sure we revisited is about, we've said several times about how important it is that your employees feel valued and feel heard. But I want to talk about what being heard means because, over the years and over the decades, I have been brought into several employee supervisor conversations, if you will, where a staff member is, trying to raise their hand about maybe they're saying that they don't feel heard or they're not being listened to. And there are times when that happens. So I'm not saying that it doesn't. So I want to be clear. But I can also tell you more times than not, when I dig deeper and I work with the two people involved, what I really start to see is that the employee disagrees with changes that are being made or some other aspect of their job requirements. And when they voice those concerns, because they don't get the desired result they want, that is interpreted as not being heard. And that's a tough position. I was going to ask, from Amanda and all the counseling sessions and coaching sessions you get involved with, what can a manager do in a situation like this where they want their team members to walk away feeling and knowing that they're valued and heard, even when a desired outcome is not possible?
Being heard is a basic need, right? We just
Mhm.
talked about Maslow's hierarchy. A basic need is being heard. It's the why, And I think many times either managers are hesitant to share the larger why, hesitant to share strategy changes, or hesitant to reveal some sort of secret sauce that is making up
Mm.
the why behind the decision. And I think that's baloney. I really do. I know that there are times where it is impossible to share every single reason that a decision is being made. It is impossible because we make hundreds of thousands of decisions every single day, right?
Feels that way, yes.
It does feel that way. So I think being as transparent as you can to
Mhm.
walk them through the why behind the decision. They may still not like the answer, but they will at least know that they were heard, even if they
Mm-hmm.
don't like the answer. So I think that is the most important thing is they may not know the inner workings of your business, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay, but allowing them in a little glimpse or an insight into why the decision was made is really important, not only so that they feel heard, but also to help them in their career growth too. Because many times what we see our individual contributors struggling with is the what's in it for me. The difference between an individual contributor and a manager is the what's in it for me versus the what's in it for us, what's in it for the
Mm-hmm.
company. And that's what the manager is responsible for, kind of walking that line, is making sure that the company's needs are met, their
Mm-hmm.
employees' needs are met, and that we can be successful in merging those two so that we can do the job that we need to do. And so being able to share the inner workings is, I think it is so powerful for individual contributors to hear that, and they feel like they now have a little bit of an insight track. And Elizabeth, I think over the years, you've done a really good job of entrusting your employees that they have the best intentions, and we also have the best intentions as the company.
Yep. I agree with everything you're saying. And I think, if we look at what's happening with the Great Resignation right now, and what I'm guessing are inevitable conversations with, our employees, property management staff, when you're looking at retention and you come upon annual reviews and things like that, I think one of the challenges a lot of businesses are struggling with right now, well, I can tell you because I can see it in multiple groups that I'm in, is that we know that there's this, crazy amount of inflation, unfortunately, right now that's happening in our country. And as an employee, there, and again, even in property management, we know that there is going to be rent growth, that we know rents are going to go up. So how does that impact people who are paying rent, whether they're living at the property or they're one of our employees paying rent? But there is another side to this, because there is still a business. And this is the hard part, because to have a broad stroke approach of bringing your entire company up to what employees want to see based on what they're hearing in the news or where they think numbers should be. Companies have budgets, and you have to be careful and walk that line. We want to reinvest, we want to help them meet their financial needs, and we're going to work as hard as we can to do that. But in reality, if the company's not in cash flow or the property's not in cash flow, there is a real side of this about, you could do that, but then at some point, are you risking, hey, I can do this for 3 or 4 of my team members, but then I got to cut somebody else? Because at the end of the day, we can't run the company in the red. And especially in a multifamily environment, because yeah, there's a lot of rent growth and that's the revenue side, but there's also a serious increase in expense from the supply chain issues and the contractors, their fees as well. So my advice would be in those situations is to have that honest conversation about, this is really the reality of our business financials as much as you can, and what we're trying to do as a company. But then also think about how you could get creative to maybe find other ways of incentive. Maybe if, you know, revenue cures a lot of ills. And
Mhm.
so, is there ways we can get creative with unique bonus plans or some sort of incentive when we work to exceed expectations? And so I think it's going to be important to have those conversations, because it's happening and it's going to happen if it isn't already with you and your organization. Gregory, I know, thank you for being patient with us up there, because, your specialty is really on the recruiting end of the business. But, based on everything we've heard, is there any final thoughts or that you'd like to share with us?
Circling back to Amanda talking about giving answers to employees. The worst thing I think for anybody is to get lost in their imagination of what's
Hmm.
going on here, right? And that can be terrifying for anybody, right? So whether you have to deliver a maybe not so great message of here's what's going on, or here's the ultimate plan and get them bought in,
Hmm.
either way, I think that transparency and honesty is extremely important. You just don't want people getting lost in their imagination and then feeling like they're off on an island and
Hmm.
kind of worrying about what's going on. It's good to be transparent and have those open, honest conversations with your employees.
Well, thank you for saying that. Sometimes I probably have crossed that line by being a little too transparent. I know. But the flip side of that is also I've been, my 30 years now in 2 different industries. And I think about my top performing teammates that have come along the way with me. And in reality, taking the time to educate them and have them understand the why today, because the why today may not be why tomorrow. Things change in this market, things happen. And, just being a leader that's committed to their success. So what I can't make up to you monetarily, then what else can I do to have you on this team? What can I dedicate so that you do feel like you've got something invested in your career and education? It matters. And again, I agree. Transparency is an important part of it. And, don't underestimate your team's ability to understand your business goals and your business challenges. And at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat together. And if we're going to get to our destination, we got to row together. We got to weather the storm together. I think overall, you'd be surprised how many of your team members will surprise you when you are just open to being transparent with them to the degree you can. Understandably, there are some things that are not really on. It's not fair to put that weight onto an employee. And there's certain aspects of high level business, like even with SaaS. In the very beginning, we run negative for several years. That's a normal part of starting a technology company. But for employees to see that on a regular basis might give them a heart attack. But they don't understand what we're doing to fund that on the back end. So, those are some things. Or like when you're selling a property too, you want to keep them engaged. The best thing you can do for them is keep them performing so that they have an opportunity with the next owner or operator. Because again, there's a war for talent. I've never seen anybody take over any asset or any company that did not want to keep the talent on board. I think sometimes we assume that they're automatically not going to do that. You're a top performer. Trust me, you have value. So I think that's all the time we have today. I hope you guys enjoyed this portion of our episode today. And we definitely hope you will join us again next time. Please be sure to subscribe to PropTalk on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about ResMan's property management platform and get more insight into the multifamily ecosystem, please visit myresman.com. Thanks, everybody, again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.